If you're walking into 2026 carrying the grief of a lost pet, I have so much hope and encouragement for you today. I actually have a quote that I want to share that I found by Hilary Zennon. The risk of love is loss. The price of loss is grief, but the pain of grief is only a shadow when compared with the pain of never risking love at all. My name is Lauren Elizabeth with Lauren Elizabeth Animal Art. I'm a certified art therapy practitioner and an independent pet and wildlife acrylic artist. So today I'd not only want to share and celebrate the life of Cooper, who recently passed away, but also share some helpful painting techniques, tips for painting large, round, textured dog noses, fuzzy, stretched dog muzzles, open, happy dog mouths, and pet bandanas. But real quick, I want to share what the owner said. My favorite memories of Cooper always revolve around his incredible sense of humor. We loved playing hide and seek together. When he found me, he'd pounce forward with his front paws, let out a high-pitched, excited bark, and then take off running again with that huge grin stretching from cheek to cheek. That playful pounce, that high-pitched bark, that unmistakable smile. He made his presence known, and he was excited about life. If you're experiencing that shadow of grief, as Hilary put it so well, it pales in comparison to the emptiness in our hearts if we never truly opened up to love. So it's not a waste. So creatives, let's get started. All right, so as I unpack these techniques and show you, I will be adding screen notes so you don't miss it. Now, if you've been following me for the past couple months, I've been just exploring and playing with new techniques like adding fluorescent pink and white, a wash, over top the sketch before I get started. So that's me mixing up fluorescent pink with titanium white, adding clean water to it, adding a thin layer of this paint over top the canvas before I start adding the layers. And there's many benefits, like it helps me spot those midtones, medium values. It increases color vibrancy, and I can even see some of those pinks coming up from the subsequent layers, so I can pull out more of those pinks if I want to at the end of the process. So I started with my dark values on the bottom of the nose where it's getting the least amount of light. I want to identify my light source, which is coming from above, hitting the forehead really strong, making the inside of the mouth and the bottom of the nose pretty dark. So starting with my dark grays on the bottom of that nose and then blending it up to a still dark but slightly lighter medium value gray at the top. Notice I don't go too light too soon. I actually go back to my darks to darken up the inside of the nostrils. I'll actually use straight black for that because I want it really dark. And notice how smooth this nose looks right now. So that's layer one. Layer two is not where I add dots, but a little bit larger dabs with my brush with just a slightly bit more white added to that dark to medium gray that I used for that first layer at the top. Then I'll go back to revisit my darks again to really get those curving indents around the bottom of the nose on both sides of the nose. And then I'll add layer three, the first little dots on the bottom of the nose now that aren't super light, and slightly lighter, smaller dots over top some of those dabs I made on the top of the nose. And it's why I moved from my size 0 liner brush by Arteza to my 2/0 Arteza spot brush. All right, so I've made great progress on the nose, on the eyes, still more layers to be added. I don't want to get too caught up on detail, so I'm going to move to the mouth. Now this is very similar to how I painted the nose, where I'm starting with my very dark grays. I'm outlining the inside and the deepest part of the mouth around the tongue and gums, but I'm also adding a bit of pinks. I'm adding permanent red to some of my grays. Now, if you can help it, try not to add an all dark gray or black inside of the mouth. Try to add some pinks in there. Try to get a little bit lighter grays, a little bit more interest inside that mouth. You can see I'm getting a little bit lighter along the gums. We're gonna have a lot of blood flow on that tongue or on the gums. This still contains that gray, but I just added white and a little bit more permanent red, because as we move closer to the front of the mouth, we're getting more light. So we want to add a bit lighter values there, but still stay within those medium values at the beginning. Now, you know what I didn't do in this step intentionally? I did not outline each tooth with dark gray. I'm going to recommend a medium to light value gray, even with some pinks in there. May even need some browns in there like raw sienna or even yellow ochre within and around each tooth, not super dark. Now this can be that tricky part, trying to get those dark values and medium values just right, where it doesn't look like this tongue is floating, but it joins nicely with those really darks inside the mouth. Now, if you'd like to learn how to paint the pet you just lost or learn how to paint quality pet memorials, comment down below within the next 48 hours and I'll send you a 25% off code on the Masterclass Bundle. It's very beginner friendly and literally has over 250 videos and tutorials helping you paint step by step, learning my 12-step process for painting pets and wildlife too. It's also designed to help you reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. So make sure you comment down below within the next 48 hours. I'll send you that code. The link is in the description to learn more about the Masterclass Bundle. But if you don't want to paint your own pet memorial, I also accept commissions. Here's just a few examples. I've been painting pets for over 7 years now, all kinds of pets. So I have a link to that in the description as well. Guys, let's get back to Cooper. Now, getting this right doesn't happen right off the bat. I have to just place some grays and place some pinks. Just trying to almost like molding clay, just place it and then shape it with your dark values and your medium values. We have some time, some wiggle room while this acrylic paint is still wet. And while it's wet, we can place those values and adjust them while they're damp with our dark, medium, and lights. And this is all using the blending technique. There's so much we can do with the blending technique. Now, what we're also doing, and it's why I use a size 1 round brush for this, is I'm trying to create this curving texture. So to achieve this look, I'm trying to get more of those grays closer to the center where that line indent is in the center of the tongue. I have also a few more grays, but not as many, on the outside of the tongue by the teeth. Now you might be wondering why I stopped not even halfway on this tongue and started working along the jaw on the fur. So for one, I'm having a hard time gauging value when I don't have the other areas around this tongue painted. And especially because that area under the tongue is white, it's white fur. I really need to make sure I get those values in there, because let's say I made the tongue too dark and then I painted the white fur, well, that's not helping that bring that tongue forward. So some techniques to help with that. I'm going to use warmer colors and lighter values, those two things combined to help bring that tongue forward after I've added more coolness to the area behind the tongue. Cooler values help bring things back, push things back. So I'm using phthalocyan blue and light value grays. And the other reason I decided to use this blue instead of just a gray for this area is so it ties in nicely with some of the violets, little beautiful accents of violets that I want to put closer to the muzzle area. These are analogous colors, blue and purple. They're on the same side of the color wheel. They blend together so nicely, so easily without creating a muddy color. So here we are. Now I can really place and shape those pinks. I'm adding more fluorescent pink, permanent red, and lots of white. And notice I've sort of stopped that line indent in the center of the tongue. That will carry forward to the front of the tongue, but with more of a pinkish tone. Hardly any grays to indicate that this tongue is outside of the mouth, exposed to a lot more light and hanging out of the mouth. Now this can be so helpful for somebody who's trying to connect those dark shadows from the inside of the mouth to much lighter pinks. 2 layers that are already dried. Start with your lighter value and then slowly, using just what little paint you have left on your brush, so the dry brush technique, inch your way up the mouth very carefully with that curving texture. Then repeat as many times as you need with just a very small amount of paint on your brush, like light pinks, like I'm doing here, and work from the lighter values up towards the darker values, towards the inside of the mouth, and just a little bit on your brush will go a long way using that dry brush technique. So you don't go in and grab more paint, you use the little bit that's left on your brush to add a very thin coat over top. Now I'm going to zoom into the tongue so you can notice there's a bit of a convex shape to the front of the tongue. That's why I added more of a deep vivid pink with more fluorescent pink in the center front of that tongue. It's also why I went around the front of the tongue and with a much lighter, more pale pink, just to really capture that shape. And if you also notice, there's just the sliver of shadow bordering the front of the tongue. And all I used was that same deep pink that I used in the middle center of the tongue. Isn't it amazing that we're just adding lines, but they go a long way? They help pull this tongue forward and really give it that dimension. Now, if you've been wondering, I'm using my size 0 Arteza liner brush, especially on these gums where there is going to be just tiny little highlights, tiny little indications of moisture with light gray on them. But before I add that, I want to make sure I get the front of those gums a little bit lighter. Now, if you notice really quick here, I'm adding purple to this tongue. It was definitely one of those happy accidents. Sometimes when you mix gray with pinks, it can give this subtle purple tone to it. So anytime those interesting colors pop up or I accidentally mix them, I pull them out even more later. But to up that saturation, make it more vivid, I will use an actual violet with violet, fluorescent pink, and white for that area. No grays this time. Now, something else that's going to be evident if the dog's mouth is open and wide like this are the ridges, those bumps on the outside of those gums. They're called rugal folds. You can see them on the black part of the gums and also on the inside. It's a bit of that waviness too. It's not going to be a straight line. So if you notice here, I'm adding that indication of moisture, and that's actually just with a light gray, little tiny dots spread out over top the pink area. And did you notice I also added a little hint of a peach tone? This is just another way to draw attention to those violets that I added to the tongue. I added yellow ochre, fluorescent pink, and white to the lightest part of the gums on the right side. And that yellow ochre also made its way on the teeth, just to not only add shading to it, but just a little bit of a yellow tone to those teeth. So that's a little bit of gray with yellow ochre and white, added more gray to the teeth closer to the inside of the mouth. And to finish off that mouth, I just darkened up some of these areas, especially the line indent that's reaching all the way in the back of the mouth. All right, so bandana time. When it comes to bandanas, I always recommend just one flat base layer. Determine the primary color of that bandana, like the most dominant color in it, and add just one coat over the entire bandana. Now I'm using a larger brush, size 6 Arteza flat brush to fill this in. And before it dries, okay, this is so important, you want to add your values, your dark, medium, and lights, the main ones. Just pretend it was this plain one color bandana. No patterns, no dots, no text on it, just a plain old bandana. Paint it like that. And then once this layer has dried and you've added those folds and those dark values and those light values, then you can go in with your patterns and all the other designs over top that. So while I let that bandana, the first layer, dry, I'm going to work on the muzzle. And just like I added one flat layer, I'm going to do a flat layer on the muzzle, starting with my darks, blending from dark to medium to light. And I'm just using more of that very light navy blue like I used around the neck. So just a reminder, you want to do this using the blending technique, which means you're going to need to do this at a decent pace while this paint is still wet. Now actually, I went a little too light too soon. I should have started out a little darker because the area below the nose is only just slightly lighter than the nose and the inside of the mouth if you look at the photo. So I had to go back, and I actually went with just a dark gray this time and very carefully tried to repeat those same steps. Dark, gradually getting a little lighter, and actually doing it in a way that this actually worked to my advantage, where I went in the opposite direction, using the negative space now, where the light navy blue layered over top the dark gray, creating those rows of dots for the root of the whisker. This all needs to be in before adding that fuzziness, those very short peach hairs. See how this is a lighter value that I'm using to cut in over top the dark gray? Then I'll go back to the dark grays, add a bit more spotty texture on the other side of that. So it's just trial and error. I found that this mistake of going too light too soon actually helped me out. So one thing that will accentuate that beautiful smile is just from one corner of the mouth to the other, bringing that up a bit with some medium value gray. So it's important that you definitely use a medium value gray and something that really pulls up that smile but stays round around the muzzle. Now I just really want to make sure that this muzzle also kind of looks a little stretched out, that those rows aren't just perfectly parallel lines. So what I did, and also going along with the reference, I brought out those root of the whisker dots with a medium gray, not a dark gray, because it's getting exposed to that light, having these rows come up and slightly curving up, just because with that open mouth and that big smile, this muzzle is going to be stretched a little bit. Now here's a third round with an even darker gray. Like this is the darkest I've added on the muzzle, because I realize that I will be adding light to medium gray peach hairs over top this area. So I need to go even darker. So not only did I have tiny little white specks kind of left over from when I went too light, but it needs to be darker so those peach hairs stand out a bit better. So I revisited some of my darks and my lights, and now I'm going to go back to that bandana. Back to our bandana. So if you notice that I was able to get the fur done for the most part below the bandana. So in terms of layering, you want to make sure the bottom part of the fur below that bandana is done before finishing off this bandana. Then you layer the fur over the top of the bandana. The other thing that I left out and didn't remember is that we will get a slight shadow, it might even be a big shadow depending on how long that dog's fur is, on the very, very top of that bandana where it's wrapped around and that fur is laying over top. So before I do that, I have to pause for my colors and all these designs, add that in with my darker value of grass green, cadmium yellow, and white, and then go back to my pattern. I even pulled out even more of those folds, darkened up that right side, even more. All right, so as you watch me here, I will be working on this bandana and then really diving into the detail on the text, the love, the pattern, all the different colors. But you're welcome to look at how I add the little fuzziness to the muzzle and add those final details at 27 minutes and 40 seconds. I kept a very simple background for this very reason. I planned on adding lots and lots of color. The client's favorite bandana that Cooper wore, this kind of tie-dye love one. I just want to share how many colors I used for this one bandana. So starting from the left on my paint palette, that's magenta, then fluorescent pink by Liquid X, cadmium yellow, phthalo blue, grass green, permanent red, orange, and violet, and of course white. Every color in the rainbow, This was so much fun. Definitely time consuming to add those patterns, but fun. So after I made sure I got in all those curving folds and those dark, medium, and light values using that dominant color, I let that dry and add the designs. But it's important when you do, they are consistent with the values that you just added to that base color. Meaning where you added highlights to that base color, you add highlights to the colors, the patterns, the designs over top that base layer. Same thing goes for medium values and dark values. That can be time consuming, but since they are small little designs over top that main color, you can just add in more white to add highlights, or add in more violet or phyllocyne and blue for the low lights. So you're going to be doing lots of blending when you're adding those designs. So now that the bandana is complete, now I can add the final highlights. I like to save this for the end. And I'm using a light gray and a size 0 Arteza spot brush to add just indications of moisture, even a little drool around the muzzle, around those rugal folds. So the black part, or sometimes in some dogs it might be a dark brown, just scattered little tiny dots. Then with that same light gray, so not white, not a dark gray, not maybe even a medium gray sometimes, I'll use my Arteza size 0 liner brush to add in carefully one by one short, very short peach hairs over top the muzzle. These are slightly curving too. I'd say this is probably the most challenging part of the whole portrait because you want these to be extremely thin, all around the same length, slightly curving, because you can see it's just a bit of fuzz, not really whiskers in the reference. So I wanted to keep it subtle. And so sometimes I'd have to work on another area of the portrait to just loosen up. Did that on the fur, added more white to it, then go back and touch that up. Speaking of which, that was the whole goal, to make sure that I had that base layer around the fur, a medium value, and then just inching my way up to where I'm adding white now for that final top layer, those final highlights. And I am using my liner brush for this to indicate more of that texture, cut in a little bit more carefully over top the border around that background, and bringing it down finally over top that dry bandana. Cooper does have very short fur, but it gets a little bit more textured, slightly longer, around that chest, around the neck, very typical for a dog. So I also indicated that texture below the bandana, got it really light using just straight white actually, and added a bit more texture to right where that smile is, around those curving lines for the smile. All right, creatives, thank you so much for watching. If this helped you, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.